custom to start our meetings with an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. If you would care to join us, please stand. Commissioner Brooks.
Lord, once again, we pause to give thee the glory, the honor, and the praise. We thank you for the many blessings that thou hast bestowed upon each of us. Lord, I pray that thou will continue to be merciful to us, that thou will lead and guide us in the path that thou will have us to go. Father, I pray that as we conduct the business of our community, that we would do it all decent and in order. Father, bless us to agree to disagree. Bless us to disagree to agree. Father, I pray that thou will continue to bless the leaders of our community, of our country, of our state. Lord, just be merciful to us. And when we finish the business that's at hand, I pray that thou will bless us with safe travel home. These and other blessings we pray and ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Will you please join me in the pledge behind you? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Before we get our meeting officially started, I'd like to welcome a couple of new members. Joe Nash joins us, and Matthew McHale joins us. I appreciate it, and I hope this will work out well for us and you. Thank you. First order of business this evening is to to review the meeting procedures. And if you picked up an agenda on the back of it is the meeting procedures. I'll read it. The planning staff presents the application request to the Planning Commission during staff's report. This report evaluates how the proposal conforms to the Glynn County zoning ordinance and other applicable regulations and conforms to the comprehensive plan when applied to zoning matters and ordinances. Applicants will have the opportunity to present their request to the Planning Commission. It is the responsibility of the applicants to make presentations on the request and to address any conditions or factual findings with which they do not agree. For public hearings, and tonight the public hearings, we do have some conditional uses. Those will be public hearings. Public hearing comments on public hearing items will be limited to 30 minutes for each opposing side, with a maximum of 5 minutes allocated to each speaker. For site plans, and we do have one site plan this evening, and that's the Sea Island Staff Housing. Site plans, public comments on site plans will be limited to 15 minutes for each opposing side, with a maximum of 3 minutes allocated to each speaker. Comments are to be limited to relevant information regarding your position and should avoid being repetitious. If your group has a spokesperson, please allow that individual to present your group's position in the time allotted. The applicant may then provide a rebuttal to any testimony. The chairman may terminate testimony if it becomes repetitive. The chairman will terminate a speaker's time if the speaker begins personal attacks. Your cooperation in this process will be greatly appreciated. Thank you. General business. I guess we'll approve the minutes of the December 13th, 2022 meeting, subject to any necessary corrections.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm in order,
Yes.
I move that the minutes from our December meeting be accepted with any necessary correction if there should be any.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, Commissioner Rooks. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor of the motion, please indicate. All abstain. Okay. Did you abstain, Matthew?
Well, I just,
Okay, that's
you have a
fine.
quorum without it, so
All
I
right,
wasn't here.
that's fine. With one abstention. Okay, first item on the agenda is SP 5335, Sea Island Team Member Housing Site Plan. Consideration of site plan approval for a new 84-unit, 4-story multifamily development and associated infrastructure at 651 Sea Island Road, St. Simons Island, parcel number 0415007. Wesley Franks, Roberts Civil Engineering, agent for SIAC LLC, owner and applicant. Ms. Leaf?
Great. Good evening, Commissioners. Stephanie Leaf, Planning Manager and Interim Community Development Director. So this project is the Sea Island Team Member Housing. Let's see if that's working. Yeah. There we go. This is SP 5335. So this is a site plan for a new multifamily project. They are proposing 84 units, 4-story and multifamily. Would be a 45-foot height building. This particular plan development text does allow.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I think we've got the wrong content on this form. Am I reading this correct?
Frederica Baptist Church.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Well, we got Frederica Baptist Church, which now has a CO. So I don't think we're discussing that one.
No. We
Your
won't
eyes are
be.
better than mine, Commissioner Duncan. I couldn't see it.
Chairman, would you ask the member to speak into the microphone next time?
My rare paying attention.
We can go back to that one. It's just that the chart got flipped. So it's just. Yeah. So this is the correct title, but you're correct. The table, though, is incorrect. It looks like the correct one didn't get swapped back in. But the correct table is in the staff reports that are in your packet.
Okay.
I'm sorry, our clicker is moving a little slow this evening. So this is the site. It is off of Sea Island Road, off of Coquina Circle. And these are the proposed elevations of the development. So it is one building. It's not separate multifamily buildings. It is the one building that they are proposing. And this is the proposed site plan. So as you may see, as well as explained in the staff report, the parking that they are going to have for the people that are living in the units, they are proposing it for their staff members, the Sea Island Company. The parking would be at the employee parking lot, which was also, you may recall there was a wardrobe facility that was approved a couple of years ago. So that is the proposed parking area for these residents here. And these are the notes that are part of the site plan, just kind of zoomed in. And there were some questions about the tree plan. So this particular plan development text, the Stables Market PD, did have specific criteria for tree preservation and indication of tree inventory on the site, and that did predate our St. Simon's tree canopy preservation ordinance. And so their requirement was to show trees of, I think, 24-inch or greater on site. They said that there were not any according to their inventory. And that was the limitation of what they needed to show, so they did not need to adhere to the St. Simon's Tree Canopy Preservation Ordinance because of the language that's in their PD text. And these are your possible motions. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Wesley Franks from Roberts Civil Engineering is here for the applicant. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, Stephanie, how far away is the parking?
Yes, if I can show that on the map. So the parking area, so this is the proposed site right here. The parking area is right over here.
Okay,
So it's really just kind of right across the street.
thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't know if staff can answer this or not. Perhaps the applicant can. I'm just curious. This is being categorized as multifamily. Are we actually going to have families living here, or are these going to be residents, dormitories for workers?
So it is employee housing. I did not see a specification on the bedroom count for the unit, so I think the applicant can probably elaborate a little bit more on the types of units.
Well, The reason I ask, because if the parking is way over to the side, I suspect not many of these folks are gonna be driving cars. Is that correct? Is that a fair assumption? I mean, Sea Island currently operates, employee housing over there next to, Chubb's and Ace Hardware. I mean, so I think they have some experience as to who their employees are. I mean, has there been any discussion of that?
I mean, they're required to have 2 spaces per unit, and they are showing it, it's being allocated on this,
Yeah.
this other parking lot. So yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. There's probably some that, will not have cars, and they will take the shuttle to work, and this, clearly within walking distance to some, restaurants and stores. But I'm not sure if they have a sense of how many will still come with
I
vehicles.
mean, I think it's a good thing if they don't have cars.
Yeah.
They're just,
I
yeah,
have,
I've seen them on bicycles. We see them up and down, Airport Road going to and fro the lodge. But I think that's an issue on people's minds.
Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
one
Great question.
follow-up question, somewhat related. This is an allowed use by the PD text. Is it specifically multifamily?
It is, yeah, specifically multifamily, that's correct. Yeah, it's up to 100 units on this particular tract of the
Right,
PD.
is there any density cap on that?
I know that it's just a 100-unit count. Let me see if I can.
I mean,
I can't
is there
read
a
it.
certain number of units per acre that were?
I did not see that in the PD, but I can double check that and make sure.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is multifamily would imply condominiums or apartments or something like that, and not so much a hotel. And is a hotel allowed, I guess would be a question too.
Yeah, yeah, I'll double check that and see the other
Let's
uses
you
that
look
are
at
allowed.
the development text, and let's make sure that the use makes sense for this
Yeah.
application.
And, Mr. Chairman, yeah, hotel motel use is allowed
Okay.
by the PD.
All right, well, that answers my question.
Well, I have, 2 concerns. I don't know whether you are the applicant. First of all, definitely, will it be employees only? I know it's saying employee, but I'm wondering, will it be only employees? And also, they mentioned that they will be utilizing the parking space that's already there. Okay, and according to this, they have 84 units, and they say 2 cars per unit, which will be, 168. So with the parking space that's already there, I'm wondering how much vacancy with the present parking lot will it be for the tenants there at the unit?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I think hopefully the applicant can talk a little bit more about kind of the current demand for the parking, because when they did the employee parking lot, it was not, they have the wardrobe facility there, but it wasn't really affiliated with another business per se, so it wasn't like it was a restaurant or hotel that they did the parking lot for. So it could be used for a variety of uses. But I think that's a good question about what is the current demand and how full is that lot compared to, and are they anticipating the hours to be different? That maybe is it full with employee parking at night, but then during the day it's or the residences are living there or parking there. So I think that is a good question to ask. And I'm sorry, you had a second question though that was tied on to that.
No, the parking was my main concern, and whether or not it would be employees only.
Right. So I think that's a good point. I mean, their specific description of it is that it's employee housing. I mean, the PD text allows multifamily. So according to the county regulations, the county would not be restricting who's living in this in these units at all. So that would be a private situation, depending on who they're renting to and what their lease agreements are. So they would need to talk a little bit more about that. But I think, part of your question might be down the road, if it's not used for employee housing, could it be condos or other multifamily? And according to our zoning, it could be. I mean, the PD text, would allow that.
Okay, but should it not be clear or presented to us whether or not it's gonna be employees only, or employees and others?
I guess we can ask the applicant.
But you're saying it does meet the criteria if a year from now, 10 years from now, it does become that?
Right, yeah, I think
It meets
that's,
the criteria now.
it does, yeah. So it could turn into that, and that would still be allowed by code.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Franks, you want to give us a presentation, please, sir?
Good evening, Commissioners. Wesley Franks, Robert Civil Engineering. Heard a lot of questions. I guess I'll kind of get started with a brief overview. So the Sea Island wanted to be kind of upfront with who they intend to place in this multifamily development. And again, they aren't restricted by who can use that facility, but they wanted to be upfront with who they wanted to use it. And it is going to be for seasonal and long-term employees that will be in the development. The parking adjacent, which we are allowed under 611.13 to have the parking be within proximity of the building, like we've got shown to meet the parking requirement. And to answer Commissioner Duncan's question, the majority of these employees will not have vehicles, so they will be using the Sea Island transit system that is currently in place. And as far as the number of spaces themselves, Sea Island has got parking spaces throughout the county, and they will not be in any sort of deficit with giving up the 168 that's required for this development. And again, like I said, they've got parking all throughout the county that they use, and the island as well, that they bus their employees to and from work. So I don't know, were there any other ones that I failed to discuss?
Mr. Franks, can you tell us how many parking spaces are available in that parking lot now?
There are 340 spaces currently in that parking area. And we redid that parking area, and I don't know if you want me to pass out kind of the revisions that we did in 2017, just so you kind of have a feel for it. I've got hard copies and an electric file if y'all would like to see those.
Okay, and in terms of the use of the parking lot now, is it full every day, or
I think it varies. You know, they have got and staff that works throughout different times of the day, so I don't know that it's ever full. You know, they're 24-hour pretty much service over there.
Right, so you got different shifts of staff
That's
coming and
correct,
going?
yes, sir.
There's certainly 300 and, what was the number, 340?
340 spaces
340
currently.
spaces. That's a lot of parking spaces.
Are any other parking spots dedicated to any other use that's required by the county?
The only dedicated parking would be to the wardrobe facility that's there now, but that's, I think, around 5.
Thank you.
I've got kind of a menu, I suppose, of questions here. Trash, how is that going to be handled? Handle the refuge?
Inside the building, they've got, you know, conceptually right now, they've got collection systems at different points of the building, and Sea Island, through their other developments and facilities that they have a private collection system, so they'll use Sea Island employees and staff to collect the refuse, and then they'll actually take it by truck to a dumpster that then gets picked up by Waste Management or another trash company.
Right, you are required to have a loading zone. Could you explain how that's accomplished with this plan?
Yeah, we've got the loading zone up in the front of the building, and then specifically for, you talking about for drop-off?
Well, a loading zone is required.
Yeah, the front of the building would be the loading zone.
Right, and what kind of, and that's primarily the transit system that you referred to earlier?
Yes, sir, that's primarily for the buses. In that particular entrance, we did run an auto turn analysis on the current plan you see now for the vehicle that will be making that turn.
Right. You're required to have pedestrian access to the parking. Could you explain how that works with your site plan?
Yeah, so we've got a sidewalk in the rear that takes us across the Coquina Circle to access the parking across the street.
And that'll be made as an accessible access?
Yes, sir, that during the
Handicap
civil
accessible?
construction plans, we'll show crosswalks there, anything pertinent to signage and marking to make that a safe thoroughfare.
And I suppose on your drop-off there in the front, you've done auto turn on that to make sure the buses
Yes, sir.
can get in and out of that
Yes, sir.
area there. Some questions. I've got a couple of emails today about drainage. Can you explain explain the drainage situation on this site.
Yes, so right now we've done an analysis, at least preliminarily, for what's out there now. Obviously, what we've done up until this point will meet the county ordinance when we submit our drainage report. So basically, just in a nutshell, we're going to design a system that collects the runoff from the development and discharge it to the system that's currently there without detention on site. And the main reason for that being is based off our analysis that we've done. If we were to detain, then we'd be matching the peak flows from upstream that are coming through that current system. And when we dump our water through that detained system, we'd be matching peaks at the same time. So our drainage report that we submit is going to show that our downstream, our drainage design that we discharge will be past the discharge point before the upstream flows come.
So where is the ultimate discharge going to?
So we'll be collecting our drainage, tying it into the proposed or the rerouted drainage easement that you see there. So I think the intent is going to be for that drainage ditch to be piped. So we'll collect our system runoff, pipe it into that proposed drainage system, and then it goes under Coquina Circle and then out to the marsh from there, to the east, to the west.
Commission, any questions for Mr. Frank?
I have another one. Since you're billing it for the employees, will Sea Island compensate some of that, or will the tenants be responsible for paying rent?
That's a good question. I'm assuming it could be both. I don't have that exact answer for you. So I don't know if that'll be part of their pay, is deducted from that. So I don't have that answer.
I did have one other question this evening about, that it was texted to me, about the height of the building, 45 feet. How is that measured? And is that allowed by the development tax?
Yeah, currently the max building height is 45 feet, and the current conceptual elevations meet the height requirement there. And we've kind of coordinated some details with the architect, and he's with the understanding that he's capped at that 45 feet. So anything mechanically cannot be above that 45-foot threshold.
And how is that measured?
I believe that's measured from the base flood elevation plus
Right, and
your finished floor.
Right. I think the base flood elevation is indicated to be elevation AE8,
That's correct.
so we'd be measuring from AE, or
It'd be
from 9.
It'd be the +1, yes, sir.
Yeah, so we'd be measuring from 9. You don't have any idea where the finished slab, I guess the finished slab will be above 9 then, correct?
It'll be right at that, maybe, yes, sir. We'll be compliance with the building height.
Right. There was a conceptual section that was in our packet.
Mhm.
I don't know, Ms. Leaf, if you had that or not.
Is it the?
Well, there was a section
Oh,
through.
a section, okay. No, I didn't put that in.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
I would like to issue a caution to the engineer, or to the architects rather, based on looking at that section, there was only a 2-foot 4-inch parapet. Mechanical equipment for a building like this is going to typically be 4, sometimes 5 feet tall.
Yeah. And
So they'll need to depress that somehow in order to get that equipment in there under the height. And you
Okay.
did mention mechanical equipment.
Yeah, I did, and that's been brought up, and they've been informed of that, so
Okay.
they're making the necessary adjustments.
All right. Any questions? Commission? Hearing none, we'll open this up for public comment. Keep in mind, everyone's allowed 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, just before the speaker starts, apparently online, the audio is still a little bit muffled
You'll
because
have
they're
those
watching it
pictures
online.
up. Thank you.
So if everyone can try to hold their mics closer to as they're speaking, I think that might help a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank members of the board for your good questions. I'd like to point out that the application says there's almost 7 acres, but there's no indication of what, but since those acres are not contiguous, I think you should ask about the size of the area inside the Coquina Circle. I'm speaking in opposition to this application for a number of reasons. Among other things, there are no floor plans to indicate how many bedrooms or sleeping rooms will be included in each of these 84 units. There is no explanation in the application as to why the Sea Island Company needs or wants to provide employees housing in this location, or why Sea Island employees might wish to live in company housing on St. Simons as opposed, say, on Sea Island with a nice view of the ocean, or in their own homes in Brunswick. If this is for part-time employees, what happened to the old motel by Ace Hardware, and so on and so on. Now, a competent planning commission, and I'm sure you are one, in this community and some other communities, might ask questions about why this structure is needed at all and why it's best located at this site. And a responsible planning commission might also impose restrictions to keep this from becoming short-term housing for tourists or turned into condos. What if Sea Island Company or whoever owns this property decides to pave an area on the mainland on top of the toxic waste site and have Sea Island employees park there and bus them onto to Sea Island, which would make sense. So Sea Island and the people who have bought parts of it are notorious for changing their minds about things. This application states there'll be 168 parking spaces. Yeah, and we've heard that, oh, they're more than enough, etc. I had taken some cell phone photos, and I was hoping Ms. Leaf would be able to put them up, but she couldn't. I'm hoping that others will speak in opposition to this, and that some who speak very briefly might yield the remainder of their time to me to see whether we can get away with yielding time to loquacious old farts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else? 3 minutes. Mr. Kilgore, please state your name.
Jeff Kilgore, and for those of you who have been here before, you know that every time I come up here, I'm asking that you simply follow your ordinances. In your ordinances, Robert's Rules of Order are incorporated by reference and in total. Under Robert's Rules, you cannot approve something that's illegal. And so let's talk about what's not legal about this application. Under section 619.2 of your ordinance, there are certain requirements that are incumbent on the applicant to disclose regarding the stormwater and drainage. This application is not in compliance with section 619.2. The applicant's required to disclose and report to you the existing stormwater drainage structures and the proposed locations of stormwater detention areas if required. That information is not in this application, has not been disclosed to you, and it's the reason why you had to ask questions. There also is the Georgia Stormwater Manual, which is incorporated in your ordinances. And the applicant must calculate what falls on that site, how it's going to be treated, and how the stormwater runoff will not exceed what it is currently. That information is not disclosed to you. You don't have it. Under 619.4 of your ordinance, it requires that you review the information that's required in 619.2. And since you don't have it, you can't review it. Therefore, you cannot comply with 619.4. And so I would suggest to you that beyond just those items, there's issues with regard to this blithe explanation that there's parking all over the county. It's not what the ordinance says. The parking that has been approved previously was for a separate use. You can't simply say, well, I've got parking here and I got parking there, and I'm going to do this new application, and all those other parking apply to the new application. Moreover, you can't say that, I don't believe, that the tree ordinance does not apply, because this application is being filed and submitted to you today for review. In fact, the PD text is 10 years old or 12 years old, whatever it is. It's not relevant, I don't think. And so I would have hoped that some of y'all would have researched that and you'd have an answer. I don't
Mr.
think the
Kilgore, you got
PD
one.
text can supersede your ordinances. And so you don't have what you need to make an informed decision. I would ask that you defer this application or deny it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Is there anyone else that has any comments this evening? Yes, sir. Please state your name.
My name is Jane Fraser. I sent all of you a letter this afternoon. The application is not ready for approval because it is incomplete. It lacks the required and relevant analysis of stormwater, as Mr. Kilgore has just said. Ignoring stormwater at this stage could risk later flood damage, and I'm hoping that some of the people here are the ones concerned in being flooded already, and water quality problems. I'll just go through 3 items. The application does not address stormwater as required. The site plan as proposed would destroy coastal wetlands and does not consider wetlands permitting or mitigation of these impacts. The proposed site plan is for construction in a special flood hazard area, and the county flood damage prevention ordinance prohibits encroachments in such areas. That's something you all need to be aware of as commissioners. I did want to address Mr. Franks when he was asked about where the discharge point. He said it would be beyond the collection, but then he said it was going to run under Coquina. Well, most of Coquina, as you should know, is wetlands. And so we have 2 points. We have an entry here before Coquina running under Coquina, but if that is moved and then at another time he said it was after. So anyway, I want to leave time. I just want to say that Coquina Circle is in an extremely strategic position, much lower than all the properties to the east. If you walk from CVS down to Coquina, you're going to have trouble, especially if you are an older person, you're going to have trouble going back up that hill because that is a steep hill, and when we have the torrential rainfalls, I guarantee you everybody gets flooded. Thank you very much. I hope you will deny this project.
Thank you, Ms. Frazier. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ronald Grubb. I was just curious, I was trying to pinpoint where this location was, and the previous speaker kind of clued me in. It's just west of CVS
Correct.
on Sea Island Road, kind of across from the Sea Island Inn.
Right.
Okay. In the paper this morning, it said that the size of the footprint of the building was going to be 8,000 square feet. Is that correct?
Please address the commission.
I'm sorry. In the paper this morning, it said the footprint of the building was going to be 8,000 feet. Is that a correct statement?
We'll ask the applicant to answer that question for you.
Because if it is, and it's 4 stories, that's 32,000 square feet of building, and if you divide that by 84, that comes out to be about 380 square feet per individual unit, which is about the size of a hotel room. So I just wondered if that was going to be the size of these units, or if there was a bigger building and you'd have larger units. Also, is there any requirement for joint water and sewer to come in and talk about the amount of water and sewage that be required, and if it will be able to be handled by, there'll be enough water, and if the sewer will be able to be handled by what's in place now, or will there have to be some modifications made by joint water and sewer to accommodate this building?
That's a good question. We'll ask the applicant to answer that for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll call the public comment section closed. Commission,
How about in favor?
pardon?
How about people speaking in favor?
Oh, no, it's comments. You can comment either way, Mr.
Well, I'd like
Mr.
to speak
Smith?
in favor. No, I'd like to tell you why you might be in favor of this, if the application is ever complete.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Julian Smith again, and I'll be very brief. To be fair, I'll admit this location is, it would be a good one for actual employees, particularly part-time employees who do not know the area. It's convenient to a drugstore. It's convenient to the Harris Teeter, convenient to a bookstore. It's convenient to all kinds of upscale shopping, etc. There's a movie theater across the road. It would be a gift, even if the rooms are very small, to employees to have them in such a nice location. But let's make sure that everything else is suitable. And let us remember, by the way, that that wetland is full of trees that are sucking up water. So by closing off that wetland, by putting an impervious building on and sidewalks and so on, you're adding to the stormwater load that's going into the marsh or wherever it's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Just for clarification, does the time count mean walking from the lectern to here?
He didn't use 2 minutes. I appreciate that. Thank you. Public comment is now closed. Mr. Franks, there were some questions laid out. You want to try to answer some of those?
Yeah, I've kind of got a couple of them written down. So with regard to the building size, yeah, that's around 30,000 square foot is the footprint of the building that you see on the site plan. And then as far as water and sewer, we've got compliance from joint water and sewer that capacity is available for the development. And then,
That's 30,000, not 8,000.
I'm not sure where the 8,000 came from.
Yeah, that was in the newspaper.
So it sounds like condos.
And then with regard to the wetlands, currently our environmental consultant, we have got a jurisdictional determination that the wetlands are not waters of the U.S. and that the placement of dredge or fill into those non-jurisdictional wetlands will not require any sort of Army Corps permit. So we've got all the documentation needed to proceed with what we've got proposed currently.
Yeah, there was some criticism about lack of information based on 619.2.
And then, yeah, with regard to that, I believe the requirement is a description of the stormwater, and I provided a description on the site plan. And then as far as beyond that, when we get to the construction plan process, we'll be required to provide a drainage report along with our construction plans on how we're meeting the ordinance requirements.
Well, specifically, it says existing water lines, sewer lines, and fire hydrants, number one. That's
We've
on
got
your.
it shown, yes, sir.
That is on your site plan, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Right. Existing stormwater drainage structure, that's on your site plan?
Correct, yes, sir.
Currently?
And then we've got the rerouted drainage ditch
Right.
and easement along the north side, which was approved last month.
And then, if I understood you correctly, in your presentation, proposed locations of stormwater detention areas if required, and you have said that they are not required?
Currently, yes, sir, with our preliminary analysis, yes, that's
And
correct.
that's based on your analysis. What's the follow-up step after this? If we are approved, where does stormwater go next? I mean, I guess who Who makes the determination whether or not your calculations are correct?
The drainage report will describe how we're meeting the ordinance and the intent, and the county engineer will approve that drainage report once we submit it with the construction plan documents.
Does the state weigh in on that as well?
It's just the county.
Just the
That's
county?
why you're supposed to have those calculations.
I read what it says, and Mr. Kilgore, thank you, but 619.2 does have specific requirements. The calculations are not listed. Commission, anything else?
Just for
I'm
clar-
just,
sorry, go ahead. There you go ahead.
well, first of all, I'm curious because we haven't talked about the room size. Are they hotel type room or they're apartment?
They're apartment style, and right now, the current, there's, I think, plus or minus around 75, 4-bedroom, 4 threes, and 4 singles.
Will there be a specific length of time, you know, that they can stay there, or will it be indefinitely, or?
It's indefinite. It's really, I guess, how long they intend to be employed at Sea Island, seasonal and then long-term. So, yeah, it's whatever their, I guess, work stay would be.
Yeah, based on the site plan, and being an architect, I can kind of decipher when I'm looking at it. It appears on the site plan anyway that there's a living area, a living dining kitchen area, and then 2 bedrooms on either side of that. And that looks like the majority of the rooms. or the
That's
majority
correct.
of
Yes,
the
sir. I
units.
confirmed that today.
Sort of the same style as you would see on a college campus.
Something similar, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, there was a question raised about the parking allocation and the existing parking being part of Sea Island Company's overall parking. Is that parking dedicated? Is it tagged and cannot be reused? Can you address that, Wesley?
For my knowledge, I believe that they bulk in their parking, you know, not held to one specific development, and it can be used there or on their other parking facilities, to my knowledge. So I don't think that it's that number specific to any one particular development that they've got right now. That's just where they have their employee parking. Because we did modify, like I said, that parking in 2017, and when we submitted the construction plans for that, the county didn't indicate that that parking, whether we increased it or decreased it, was tied to any specific development.
So if I understand correctly, that parking lot is just that, an employee parking lot, not tied to facility at all?
Correct.
So the number is just what they thought they needed?
That's
correct?
right, yeah, they've capped that area to 500 spaces. And obviously, we're below that right now, but it's not tied to any specific other than
specific use.
employee use.
Commission, any other questions?
Just for clarification, it's 4 30,000 square foot floors, or the whole building's 12?
Yeah, just the footprint that you see is 30,000 square feet.
Okay, got it.
That's
Thank you.
right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frank.
I just have one last question about jurisdictional waters. If they're not deemed jurisdictional, they can be filled, so no other mitigation is required, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
You don't have to buy some wetlands in Milledgeville?
No, sir.
Right. Well, that's part of the plan here, locally. Right?
Yeah, while we're on that, Coquina Drive, there was a lot of comments about that. Could you kind of expand on the issues that you may be aware of?
The draft can elaborate to what specific? I don't think I'm.
With drainage?
I do know that there's some improvements that Public Works is working on right now, but as far as any issues, I can't speak to anything specific.
Is there any impact that this project would have on that?
No, I think if anything, we would be improving the drainage.
How so?
Just like I mentioned earlier with our analysis, basically where, you know, not detaining, where we're now dumping our water into a system that's, got upstream flow coming into it, which would then back up the system upstream. We're also, improving the ditch that's there now by relocating it, whether we clean it out and it's, you know, a little more streamlined, or with pipe, which I think that's gonna be the intent in the future, is to get that pipe. So, I think overall, that's an improvement to the system that's there now.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Stormwater manual, requirement, go beyond just the ordinance?
Wesley?
I'll reiterate that. So again, with our submittal of the construction plans and the drainage report, you know, we will be held to the current stormwater ordinances, and our report will detail those
And
requirements.
that is reviewed by the county engineer, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And you have to do what he says.
Correct, yes, sir.
I think as a planning commission, that's all that we can do.
We're engineers.
Right, okay. Commission?
I'll make a motion to approve SP 5335 as presented.
I'll second.
Got a motion, and a second?
I would just like to comment, there was no one here from the school to speak for or against this project.
We actually are here for the school.
Okay,
Chose not to speak.
so being silent on this issue, I presume they approve it. And being directly impacted by by proximity, it kind of says a lot to me. So I think that was kind of an obvious missing piece here tonight.
Could I be allowed to clarify your presumption of our position?
We'll open up the public comment for 3 minutes.
My name's Taylor Haley. I'm an attorney, and I'm also a parent of children at the school. And Mark Cock, this is the headmaster of St. Simon's Christian School here. I won't say that we approve. I won't say that we oppose. We have some concerns that we feel like we weren't made aware of some of the specifics about this until a little bit late. But we would like to dialogue with the applicant. We've been in communication with them about some of the concerns that we have and working together. In my history of doing land use and zoning over 18 years, practice as a lawyer, PD texts are notorious for this, especially when the PD texts are written when one party owns all of it. It's very easy to kind of divide out what all the goodies are, and then when different people start owning different parcels, it is a little bit less clear. But as a school, we've tried to be good neighbors with Sea Island. We've had a harmonious relationship for a long time, and we want that to continue. But we do have some concerns that we would like to see addressed, but we're hoping that in the development stage that we can continue to work together. So we didn't feel like it was in the school's interest to come and oppose it, but we wouldn't be being good stewards of the property that we have and for our families if we weren't monitoring this. But I won't say that we're standing here in support of it, and our silence doesn't necessarily mean that.
Okay, and you do have a current dialogue with Sea Island about this project?
Yes, sir.
You do, okay. And Mr. Franks, you heard all of that? All right, thank you. We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Well, and then the rest of them we'll hear about
Every time.
Parkway. All right, next on our agenda is CUP 5356 826 Parkway, St. Simon's Island, conditional use permit. Consider a conditional use permit for improvements seaward of the development setback line pursuant to zoning ordinance section 727 Beach and Dune Protection District. The property is located at 826 Parkway, St. Simons Island, parcel number 0404058. Property is zoned resort residential and Beach and Dune Protection District. Blake Hightower Land Design Associates, agent for Venus Griffin VMG Properties, LLC, applicant and owner. Ms. Lee?
Thank you. This is CUP 5356, since 826 Parkway, and this is for our newer commissioners. Section 727 of the zoning code has some development setbacks that along the ocean front, and so properties that are adding patios or pools, walkways, things such as that, could apply for a conditional use permit to have those granted to be within the development setback. This is kind of a part one of a two-part process for oceanfront applicants. The second part would be to go to DNR for their permitting, but they cannot move forward to DNR for permitting until the county has issued all of the permits necessary for the site. So, and these are recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. So this particular property, they did actually receive a variance, I want to say earlier, sometime last year. They are a substandard lot of record, and they were interested in doing or constructing a home that was taller than what would have been allowed on the substandard lot of record. So they did get a variance. Actually, upon appeal, the Board of Commissioners granted a variance up to a certain height for this structure. And so they have requested to have a pool, patio, and native landscaping seaward of the 25-foot development setback line. And there's a couple of conditions that I've added, and I'll talk a little bit more when I get to the plan. So this is the property on Parkway. And I will note that we still had, this is an update to the review history, so we just wanted to include, there was a couple of reviews that hadn't been completed by the time the staff reports needed to go out. So those are all compliant, and this is just a copy of the review history for your review. So here's a survey of the property. And there is an existing single-family home cabin on the property. And this is their proposal. So their 25-foot setback line basically goes up to this point here. So this line that runs right along here is really where that ends. So here's their patio and pool that's proposed there. And that all is allowed under a conditional use. They are showing, and the landscape architect and I talked about this when we met, they are showing a portion of the building extending in. That is not allowed as a conditional use. The only way they could extend a portion of the building in is to go before the Board of Appeals to get a variance from the development setback requirements in the zoning code. So that portion cannot be allowed as a conditional use at all. So I've added some conditions regarding that. Another point, just, and this I've let the landscape architect know as well, it's not necessarily part of this conditional use permit, but the resort residential zoning does have a 50% lot coverage, or site coverage maximum. So just for them to keep in mind with both the building and the hardscape and everything on the property, that on a smaller lot, that 50%, could, may come into play there.
What, I'm sorry if I may pause you, what is it at based on that site plan?
That I did not calculate. I don't think they have, and they might be able to elaborate more on that. We haven't seen official plans yet for this site, so I'm not sure what their final calculation. We would check that at building permit stage, but just in terms of looking at what is being proposed for their for their yard at this point. But they might have more of that information
Thank you.
to share. And the other thing with that, so in addition to the, another condition I just suggested was, there's a couple of spots they didn't specifically indicate that the landscaping was native. You can only have native landscaping seaward of the development setback line, so I just wanted to, just ensure that that is what they would, place on the site. So these are your possible actions. As I mentioned, this is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And here's a couple of the conditions I've suggested. If you are, if it is the Commission's pleasure to approve with conditions, the house encroachment is not permitted unless a variance is applied for and granted by the Board of Appeals, and all landscaping within the setback shall be native plant materials. And I'm here to answer any questions, and Mr. Hightower is here for the applicant. Thank you.
Commission, any questions for staff?
Yeah, what was the height, variance?
Oh, that is a good question. They,
I think it's settled
is that what the applicant said, it was 32? Yeah. Yeah, I think initially, they would have been limited, I think, to 28 under the substandard, is that correct? Yeah, so they were trying to go higher than that, so 32 is what was settled on.
Any other questions? I've got some.
The house is not constructed yet?
No. How is, we've got a relatively new beach and dune protection district, and we're trying to get our arms wrapped around exactly how this works. How is the development setback determined for this particular lot?
So it's determined basically in consultation with the Department of Natural Resources. So, so the jurisdictional determination that DNR would issue would inform, you know, where the line is. Previously in the prior code, it was required to go before the Board of Commissioners to officially establish that. In the code amendment, it is basically a staff level decision, and really, I mean, through this whole process, you're kind of verifying it, but it does not require kind of a second meeting
We've
from the
got,
board.
and
Yeah.
I tried to refresh my memory as to how this works. And Area C, I guess, is what this is based on, which is determined with a serviceable shoreline stabilization. And with this particular lot, we've got a rock revetment, which is forward of the property line, actually. And then we've got, it looks like a concrete block wall, a garden wall or something that was built at one time. Which one of those was determined to be the serviceable shoreline stabilization?
And I think, yeah, I think that as a architect, I can talk a little bit more about that, because I thought there was, I'm trying to remember from the survey, I thought there was a dune that was shown on the property.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, they're showing it as, yeah, because you're correct. If it would have been a rock revetment, then it would have been the mean high water mark. That would be the measurement. So they are showing it as much further landward. Yeah, if I could defer to him to talk more about that.
Have you got the survey loaded up?
I have this survey, but I'm not sure if it's
Okay.
showing the.
They're on the survey, and you know, as you may recall, Commissioner Brock and I worked on this for a while, trying to come up with some suggestions for the county. There is a rock revetment out there, which you see down there at the bottom, which I think at the time we considered the shoreline stabilization area. And that was based on, and this rewrite was based on what the DNR had suggested
Right.
for them, right? And we just copied it, essentially. And you said the DNR was part of determining this particular setback, or no?
That, yes, and that's what I know when they drew the line for the plans. My understanding is based off the jurisdiction determination.
So,
Chairman, it looks like the SP line was delineated April 2021, so it's expired. It's only good for a year, right?
yeah, and, right, and well, and there's a couple of things on there. It's shown, I think it's shown one of the setbacks lines at 40 feet. We're no longer using 40 feet. In fact, the portion of the building that's within the jurisdiction, you said was within that setback line, based on this new reading, it really isn't.
Let's see.
The survey was from 2021, so it doesn't take into account.
Right, and I think we adopted that last year, did we not?
That's right.
In 2022? So there's some issues with exactly how this may work for this particular site. And
Yeah, I see, now that I've been able to zoom in a little bit more, they are showing that the toe of the landward sand dune is along the cinder block wall. So that is why the 25-foot is measured from that, because that's considered the toe of the landward sand dune.
Right, there is one sentence at the very bottom of this. It says, when more than one of the areas described in 727.3 exist on the same parcel, the most landward development setback line will apply. And I guess in this case, the DNR in this case considered the concrete block wall is the stabilization, and then measuring 25 feet from that, it appears is what's on that site plan. And it's not
Yes.
40 feet, it's 25, correct?
Correct, right.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? I think I've confused everybody enough. Okay. I would like to hear from the applicant, please, sir. Or please, ma'am, whoever.
Hey, I'm Blake Hightower with Land Design Associates, and thank you for this time this evening. As you pointed, the property that we are pursuing has a portion of the building. Can you go to the next slide, please? Stephanie, can you go to the next slide, please? We do have a portion that you have noted may not be applicable for a conditional use permit from y'all, but the intent, as you brought up, with the rock revetment being closer or further away from the property than this 6-inch stone garden wall, I have calls into the DNR trying to combat this. They did re-verify the SBA line. There's a letter. It's just not updated on that survey. But with that, trying to get clarification on where they chose to put this line based on the rock revetment being there, vegetated sand area, does not look like it's part of the sand sharing system, but it is a sandy area between vegetated portion of the existing property to over the revetment and to the beach. So as part of that, the idea of asking for this extension into the 25-foot development setback as being just unconditioned porch space, that the main foundation of the house be landward of the development setback line, and that the only thing seaward of it be 2 support posts, not tied to the main foundation of the structure, along with the pool deck and native vegetation as required through the DNR SBA permit.
Did you say it would be
Okay, but
covered?
It would be covered, and I do have, what I did not have when I submitted the application were a few 3D models, very basic in nature, but I do have that I can pass out for y'all to see what I'm explaining. I apologize. And very schematic in design, as you see, but all the conditioned space will be landward of the development line, and these would just be exterior porches that extend.
I don't think that would be allowed, though.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess to me, I still have a question of where the development setback line is. You said you're in communication with the DNR now?
Yes, I'm speaking with Josh Noble with DNR on trying to update and verify what is going on, because what's happened is they've taken this garden wall, which comes out, this concrete block it's like landscape border, and it comes out the ground, and he's calling that yes, he's calling it a concrete bulkhead instead of, and that's not what it is. Yeah.
Well, it does talk about when you have 2 or more development setback line applications, the most landward would apply. That is in our.
And they're calling that the most landward, yes, but.
Yeah, okay.
we
Well,
are-
and I guess I don't know, from my point of view, it may be beneficial to iron this out with the DNR before we make a decision on it.
Okay.
I think that would be beneficial to you all.
Okay.
It adds some clarity for us.
Yeah.
Again, as I stated in the beginning, this is relatively new. I'm not so sure that all of us are exactly up on how this is supposed to work. It does say in every single instance, it says in consultation with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources.
Yes, and
So,
as you said, with the ordinance
So I would
change,
assume the county, Ms. Leaf, the county would work with
Yeah.
the Department of Natural Resources to make this final determination.
yes, and in your comment that this was a recently new change, to understand prior properties had the approval from DNR based on a site coverage, site down piece, which we have done. So within the SBA jurisdictional area, we have met the requirement for that, and that is where we were attesting to.
One other thing, and Ms. Leaf brought this up, and it is important, and that's site coverage.
Yes.
And Ms. Leaf, you're pretty positive that site coverage applies to single-family neighborhoods in the resort residential district?
Yeah, that's my read on the code, is it applies for all resort residential properties.
All residential
Yeah,
properties?
the difference is, a single-family home doesn't have to come through site plan approval through the commission, but the site coverage requirement is still in there
Okay.
for all.
Do you understand that, Mr. Hightower?
Yes, and as we are continuing the development of plans of architectural and driveway and everything else, we will definitely take into account the 50% site coverage.
Have you done a calculation on this as it is right now?
Not at the moment, because the footprint, we were just looking at a max area in calculations with the SBA jurisdiction, just to kind of show a max site coverage for this permit. And we're working through the architecturals, and we'll continue to work through that as we know our approvals.
Ms. Leaf, the site coverage is based on the area of the property, is it not? I mean, we aren't including anything beyond the property line seaward. So it's just within the boundaries of the property.
Correct. It says site coverage shall not exceed 50% of the development area.
Well, that's a twist. What does that mean?
Right.
It means the property.
Well,
I'd say,
well,
yeah,
the
I'd say the
development
property in
area,
this
there's
situation.
areas that you can't develop. Is that development area?
Yeah, I mean, that's the property.
Development area is defined in the county code.
Let's look at it.
I mean, we don't need to debate that here. I mean, it's.
Well, I think it's important to this
Yeah, I'll
applicant that
pull
we
that up.
understand.
I would certainly ask Josh if you could remove the garden edging and then reestablish SBA line.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I've got the definition of development area in our code here. It says all land used in calculations for density and site coverage. It shall not include waters of the state as defined by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. Jurisdictional wetlands as defined by the Army Corps of Engineers. Areas seaward of the beach and dune development setback line. Public or private rights of way. Access easements or access ways as appropriate.
So there you go. Areas seaward of the beach and dune development setback line are excluded.
That's right.
Well, that hurts his math, because that reduces the total.
That's,
So your denominator becomes a bigger proportion.
So by understanding that, that is everything landward of the development line within the property lines is the calculation that we have to be 50% or less.
right. It's
As long as they're already in easement.
Yeah, like I said, we've recently have approved this, or the county commission recently approved this new ordinance. These are all things that we're trying on for the first time, and I think this application may be a little premature. But if the commission would like to hear, I know there's people here that might want to speak to this tonight. I would like to hear from them, if I may. Is the commission in agreement?
I just have one comment, Mr. Chair. There was a clarification comment about the porch section
Yes,
that's covered.
yes.
I mean, I understand this is a concept perspective, but certainly that's part of the structure of that building, the way it's designed.
Yeah, the main foundation block of this entire surrounding building will stay landward of the development line minus the two columns. They'll have their own footers, but that's the only part. It will not connect all the way around.
Understood. But you got a covered floor there, concrete presumably,
Yeah, and I
on that
think,
ground level porch,
So,
correct?
yes, and for clarification then, in I place this.
For all intents and
Yeah.
purposes, that's a building.
Well, and
Yes.
and it's specifically not allowed. I mean, there are certain
I
things
mean-
that we can recommend a conditional use permit for. That's not one of them. It's fairly simple.
So-
In my reading of that, it's fairly straightforward.
So for understanding that and the need of building changes, the reference to the pool and the pool deck, anything there on comments?
I'm not sure I understood the
He
question.
wants to know how we feel about just the pool area.
Well,
Take the house out of the equation.
yeah, I tell you what, there are some people that would like to speak to this tonight. Let's hear from them, and then I'll ask you to come back up.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank
Is
you.
that fair enough? Anyone who'd like to speak?
Yes. You want to start in favor or opposed, or either?
Let's do them both at the same time.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Yeah, be my guest.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just want to have a point of order.
Yes, sir.
We do not allow same speaker to speak for, against, and then for a project. That rule is clearly established in the past.
Has it been?
It has been.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Stay with you for a while.
You are correct. You can't do it, or I'm correct. I should say. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
My name is Richard Altman. Miss Griffin's next door neighbor. I'm confused, and I'm certainly not against, and we've spoken, by the way. I'm not against some landscaping and so forth out there in front of our house. But I'm trying to figure out on here, where's that little concrete, it's two scores of concrete block out there. Some of it may be covered up. But can you tell me where that line is?
Right along here.
It's basically, the property line is based on the survey.
Well, there's a section between our property and the edge of the property, which used to be a road. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, what's ours and what's not ours. I mean, I know where the Johnson rocks are, and on my property, there's another piece of Johnson rocks, 50 feet wide, long, across, wide. So I'm trying to figure out where the property, where is what you're doing gonna show?
Is it right here? So this is Parkway right here, and this is the beach. So I think this, on the old survey, I think it's the road.
These are hedges that are on my property. And then it comes out here, and the Johnson rocks are down here. Now, where's the pool gonna go? I guess that's
Right below that stalk.
right there?
Right there.
Right where your finger is, yes.
Right.
Pretty much right there. Okay. Thank you. That answered my question.
Thank you, Mr. Altman.
I was confused too.
Is anyone else who'd like to speak to this? It's either for or against, Mr. Smith, not both. And you can't come back later and speak for it.
Well, I'm glad you guys are not as tough as some boards are. I'm Julian Smith. In 1967, my wife and I bought and restored an abandoned colonial-era farmhouse that was started in 1740. We put a lot of money into it. We moved our family into it. About a year into the process, we were informed by the Zoning Board of Adjustment that the house had been abandoned for more than a year, and it was no longer grandfathered, and it was 3 feet from the property line along the road, and we had to move it back 30 feet. Well, that took some doing. We didn't move it, but we had to agree to all kinds of terrible things. You don't do that, and I'm grateful. But I'd like to raise a few negative issues about this application. One of the problems is cultural. You fly over Sea Island now and you see along the beach pool after pool after pool after pool. And the people who don't have pools, soon they're going to have pools. And they're all within a setback, and they've gotten essentially variances. So this is what is happening here. What we have here is $1 million plus tear down. An old house, has it been torn down already? I don't know. I didn't bother to look. The pool deck and the fireplace, if you look at the site plan for what is proposed, both intrude into the 7-foot setback. They're right up against the property line. That is pool deck on one side, pool deck and the fireplace on the other side. So there is no 7-foot setback. I look at what is identified on the application as basically impervious surface. 1,918 feet for the house, 249 for the pool deck, for the pool, 408, et cetera, I think for the pool deck. That comes to 2,575, and that's a 5,000 square foot lot. So you're going to have more than half the lot impervious surface. And there's absolutely nothing in the application having to do with the parking area up by the road. Is that going to be impervious? Is it going to, et cetera? So I think you need to ask some hard questions. And I'm very sympathetic to people who want to have the nicest house possible on the beach. I live in a shack myself, far from the beach. Anyway.
You got 1 minute, Mr. Smith.
Yeah. Well, I actually have 2. I've got more I could say, but I'm going to stop. So, thank you very much, and I'm sorry, Mr. Griffin, for having to be so negative.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else? Oh, please, there's got to be a follow-up to this. And I assume you will be for, correct?
I'm for. However, I am a rule follower. I'm Venus Morris Griffin. I own the property. And so I bought this property. I'm a single mother of 7 children, and I bought this property to vacation with my family. And never had the intent of making this a rental property. This was solely supposed to be a little getaway for me and the kids. Quickly, 6 months down the road, I realized with 7 children and 800 square feet that it was not going to work, because by the time we left, we were all completely frazzled and wanted to kill each other. So when I purchased the property, my neighbor to the right has a 45-foot property and a pool, and much like what I envisioned I would do much later down the road as my finances improved. So I didn't have the intent on doing what I'm doing now. And I was actually offered plans, and y'all may remember me from before, to buy for $30,000. So when I bought the property, I was told I could build a 45-foot structure. I was grandfathered in because I was an original lot of plat. I wasn't a substandard lot that had been divided, or I never would have purchased the property. Since then, I know the rules have changed. That's fine. I want to be a good neighbor. I'm a rule follower. But what I'm asking for is consideration within the conditional use guidelines that you would grant me and my family to do this. Dan Busey, who is the expert on the SBA line, said because of the recent changes in the law with the setback being now 25 feet versus 40, that I would be within keeping of what you guys would consider approving, as well as the architect design, Jeff Homus, yes. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to follow the rules. I'm trying to do everything right. I'm not of wealth. I don't want the nicest. I've worked very hard, 70-hour work weeks for years as a single mom of 7. I'm not entitled coming here trying to have the best and greatest. I've worked hard to provide this for my family and children. And that's all I'm asking. If you would look, tell me what I need to do differently. I'm open to doing that. But, you know, rules are sometimes meant under certain circumstances to be bent a little. And, you know, when I'm looking at my neighbor to the right who has a 45-foot structure and his retaining wall is actually on my land, which I'm okay with because I'm a nice neighbor. I'm not going to make him tear it down. You know, what I would do would improve all of the neighbors' view around me. It would improve the parking because now with my 7 children, we're all on the street. We would have parking underneath the property, and it would just make it a more pleasant for people that live on the island as well as visitors. So I'm not here stomping my feet. I want to know what I can do better. I was told, you know, we could possibly cantilever the porches and it be within keeping. I don't know. Again, I'll do whatever I need to do, but that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for or against? We'll close the public comment. Mr. Hightower, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
Yes. As Ms. Vina just mentioned, there was a potential discussion whether if we used steel beams to cantilever the porches over with no foundational posts being put in the ground seaward of the development line, if that would be a possibility that y'all would look into.
I don't, if indeed the setback line, development setback line is where it is, I don't think we have, I don't think as a commission we have that latitude, you know, to grant that. I don't know what the rest of you think, but I don't think we're given
But
the flexibility.
it would be within the 7-foot building setback, but the overhanging that allowing.
I think it's still defined as, I mean, it's the footprint, right? It's not the, I mean, it's the shadow of the structure,
It's,
right?
no, it's the extruded,
Right.
yeah, so I don't think that'd be allowed.
I know the DNR doesn't allow it because we've been slapped for that before.
But Ms. Rooks has got something to say.
Well,
Please.
my concern is, where I feel, follow the policy, the procedures that are in place. If not, you look at others coming along, okay, you did it for so-and-so, why can't we? And I think chain reaction, you know, the domino effect would come about if it start bending. I don't care how much teensy-weensy bit or bit. I think eventually we will run into trouble. I guess that's the way I see it, because someone can come along, okay, you did it for so-and-so, we can't do it. Next thing you know, a suit is coming about. So,
Clarify one thing, though. And Commissioner Nash, you got something to say?
Well, when you first started in, Stephanie, we're not looking at the encroachment on the structure would make on the setback, are we? We're
Well,
talking about the conditional use of the pool and.
I think, right, the conditional use for the pool, but I think part of what staff has uncovered is that the structure is also in that setback.
Right, it is.
So whether or not they applied for it or not, they didn't apply for it, so, staff made, I think it was referenced as a comment staff made.
Now, would that be
this
more of
would
a
not-
zoning issue? Okay, so.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I was gonna just talk a little bit more about that. Exactly. So for the purposes of what you all are here tonight to look at, yeah, whether the deck or the portion of the building is cantilevered or not, I mean, it's a vertical line. So anything that encroaches into that setback, even if it's 12 feet off the ground, it's still considered an encroachment. I think what Mr. Hightower might be referring to is what I mentioned to him was, you know, if you all want, if they want to apply for a variance to encroach into the development setback, that would go before the Board of Appeals. They would be the authority that would review those. And if they're looking, you know, for different options to kind of potentially say, hey, this is a lesser impact because it's cantilevered, or, we had a conversation about just looking at different options, if they were gonna apply for a variance to encroach into that. But for your purposes tonight, it's not something you all can consider at all.
Right. And-
It's a hard line.
Stephanie,
Right, right. We can't tell them they can do that. I
Correct.
guess.
But-
Right.
but
And-
Stephanie-
and that's not part of
Excuse
the
me,
application.
Mr. Chair, point of order, please.
Yes, sir.
Are we still in the public hearing, public comments?
No.
Were those closed?
Yes, we closed the comments.
Okay.
I've asked for rebuttal from Mr.
Sorry,
Hightower.
okay. Thank you.
Stephanie, quick
Am I
question.
okay?
No, it's fine, because I have a question relative to,
Okay.
I didn't mean to cut off Commissioner Torres.
Okay, just to piggyback on what Mr. Nash said, our purview is the pool and deck area in development setback, and that is within our ability to grant a variance, or not
It's the recommendation.
recommendation to
recommend
the county
conditional use
commission to
permit.
approve. We can do that.
We can do that.
Correct.
Whether or not the building is ever approved or not, that's not even our purview.
Right, and I guess the same thing would apply to the site coverage as well, would it not?
That is correct, yes. Yeah,
Right.
that was something I just wanted to bring to y'all's attention. I suggested the condition regarding the building because the plan that was submitted, that's before you, does show a building going to the setback. So just for clarity in the records, just to make sure that that's known, that it's not part of y'all's approval if you were to, approve
So
the
going
conditional
forward,
use.
who would make that final determination with the building? Would
For the
that be
building, that would be the Board of Appeals. They'd be applying to,
No, well, I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
who would, does the building inspector review it next, and if he sees a problem, then it may go to the Board of Appeals?
oh, so if they did get the conditional use permit and then their next step?
The next
Is that the
step would be,
question?
I'm assuming they would apply for a building permit, and if they drew the house the way it's currently situated,
Correct. Yeah, we would catch it at building permit during
and-
that review, and the
and-
building
and-
permit would not be issued.
and our building department would catch that? Because we've had issues where they didn't always catch those things.
And that's something, a planner also does a review on all the building permits, and so that would be something the planner would be reviewing.
Good. It's good to hear, because in that resort residential district, we've got several things now that are a little quirky. We've got the 35-foot along
Right,
Ocean
along
Boulevard.
Ocean, right.
I've noticed a house going up that's 45 feet tall, and I kind of wondered. Just saying.
Well, just from what Stephanie has confirmed, that this is pretty much just what we've approved before with other properties, just like at the yacht club, and, it's just, they're building a pool and a deck and development setback, looking for us to say it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So,
we actually came from that.
Right.
And doing that as well.
That's right, we
Yeah, so-
started it.
okay, so to be clear, all we're doing tonight is looking at a recommendation for approval of the pool and the landscape.
Correct.
Is
Right.
that clear?
Conditional
Does
use
everyone
permit
agree
for
that that's what we're
improvement
doing?
seaward of the development setback line.
Okay.
Including the pool deck.
Right. The pool deck is allowed as a conditional use.
Now, this does say improvement seaward, so that building would be considered an improvement, so we need to specify if we're gonna approve the pool.
It
we
would,
just-
it
we
would
need to
be,
exclude the building.
it would be handy to itemize the improvements.
Right.
Mr. Torres, is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval for CUP 5356, specifying that it be limited to the pool and pool deck. And native landscaping.
That's a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Nash seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So that motion sounds like we're excluding approving the fireplace, the outdoor fireplace, and where it's located. Because that is a permanent structure, and it's being located on the property line, it appears, from this sketch. And I think that encroaches on the 7-foot setback.
I would agree with that.
So I guess, Mr. Torres, you're not in favor of that, I take it, Mr. Duncan?
No, I'm not in favor of that fireplace being on the property line, so I
Okay,
just
well,
wanted
Mr.
to-
Torres, did he?
I'm clarifying.
Yeah,
Would you-
clarify?
May I have a comment about that?
Can I ask the applicant, would you guys be willing to relocate the fireplace?
The reason the fireplace is located like that is because the neighboring property on the opposite side of that fireplace also has a fireplace right there on the property line. It would butt back to
Yeah,
it.
I believe that.
Well, and they're on my line, you know.
And it's encroaching on her property.
Yeah.
I could be mean and say.
Double-sided.
That's not the way I want to come in the same time.
Okay,
Yeah, my motion stands.
motion stands, so the fireplace is excluded at this point. Do we still have a second? Commissioner Nash, is your second still
So-
good?
So we're still in discussion. We received a number of emails from residents of the, what's it called, Sea Lodge, Sea Point Lodge. Is anyone here? I mean, we don't generally accept email as part of the public hearing. But when I look at the Sea Point Lodge tax parcel, I really struggle with what is the complaint? Because they have a swimming pool in the setback area that we're approving. So I'm just struggling with what were all those complaints about?
I spoke with one gentleman this afternoon who called me, and I'm not real sure he was exactly clear on what was being
Proposed,
requested.
yes.
Yeah, on the request.
So thus the point of having a public hearing.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Please indicate. All opposed? Thank you.
Can-
Congrats.
So I can clarify
One
that's
against.
everything but the fireplace.
Correct.
Okay.
I can move the fireplace somewhere else.
Okay, we aren't finished, folks. Next, CUP 5357 4212 13th Street, St. Simons Island, conditional use permit, considering conditional use permit for improvement seaward of the development setback line pursuant to zoning ordinance section 727 Beach and Dune Protection District. The property is located at 4212 13th Street, St. Simons Island, parcel number 042029999. Property is zoned one family residential R6 in Beach and Dune Protection District. Lake Hightower Land Design Associates, agent for John Shelton and Pamela Flick, applicants and owners.
Okay, this is CUP 5357, and this is another conditional use permit in the Beach and Dune development setback along 13th Street on St. Simons. And they are also looking to do a pool, patio, and native landscaping. And this is an existing house that they've been remodeling, so it is located right here, where the star is located. And again, this was another project that had a couple open reviews when the packets went out, so this is the updated review history. Everything is compliant. This is a survey of the property. And this is their proposed plan. And their line is, if I can see it, their setback line is also 25 feet, and it kind of runs along up here. And so this is their pool, patio, this is native landscaping. And these are your possible actions. Because they weren't as specific on the plan about the native landscaping, I also suggested a condition that all landscaping would be native plant materials, just to ensure that's what's planted out there. And Mr. Hightower is also here representing this applicant. Thank you.
Commission, any questions? No questions? Again, Stephanie, the development setback line in this particular case is determined by the beach, by the dune in this case, is it not?
That is correct.
Right, so from the toe of the dune, the seaward dune there, okay.
Yes.
All right.
And Stephanie, I see there's encroachment into the side setback. That's not what we're dealing with today, right?
That's right, yeah, there is an existing, house that, that does have some existing encroachments.
Okay.
So correct, that's not what we're dealing with tonight.
All right, we're ready to hear from Mr. Hightower. Mr. Hightower, would you like to give us a little view of what you got going on there?
Yes, again, Blake Hightower with Land Design Associates. The property in question for the Shelton Flakes, if you'll go to the improvement slide, please. Again, we're proposing pool, spa, and pool deck area with a masonry retaining wall to help shore up the area along the dunes. Where an existing sandbag revetment project a few years back has started to deteriorate. So hoping to shore that up more in nature and allowing us to build this outdoor space for them.
Any questions for Mr. Hightower? I don't think this one has quite as much hair on it as the last one.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hightower. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor or opposed? Yes, sir.
Thank y'all. I'm Walt McCandless, and I am one of the owners of the house just landward of the applicant's house. I'll begin with describing a sign that's approximately 25 feet from the DNR line on the seaward side of John and Pamela's property. And it says, "Natural area, use caution. Dunes are fragile environments." The state DNR line and the county development line are one and the same on this seaward side of the property. The county restricts development for 25 feet landward from that line in part to protect the dunes, which in turn protect us. The site plans show that a portion of the pool deck and the retaining wall actually are not only in the 25-foot setback line, they actually cross the DNR and county development line. Every time development is allowed to infringe upon the setback, we lose some of the dunes, we lose some of the protection from the rising seas and storms that come our way. And I put this in the plural because it's not just the homeowner who himself or herself is in jeopardy, but the loss of the dunes puts all of the neighborhood in jeopardy. I've been coming to St. Simon's all my life, and for the most part of it to 13th Street on East Beach. I've seen many changes in the shoreline. The beach and the dunes sometimes have radical changes after storms, but they always change over time. I saw Gould's Inlet change course as land filled in portions of the mouth where it exited into the ocean. A decade or so ago, the ocean was close enough to the property, particular property that's seeking this permit, that these huge bags of sand were brought in to protect it. The DNR and the community development line was established in part because of the changing shoreline and storm surges. Just because we've been fortunate enough of late to not get a direct hit from a hurricane doesn't mean that we should loosen up those restrictions. Climate change and resultant ocean rise present yet another reason to be wary of allowing development over the dunes. As for this particular request by John and Pamela, we do have some questions. What will happen to the large sandbags that were placed there? Will they be removed? Will they just simply be allowed to deteriorate? If they're going to be removed, then will sand be brought in to replace that which is taken out? I would hope so, because even if the removal of the artificial dunes it takes place, then we're still left with no dunes there. Because we live on the landward side of John and Pamela, our view of the ocean has already shrunk because of their new addition. We would be interested in knowing the proposed height of the retaining wall to see if it will further block our view. Also, the plans do not show any screen going over the pool or any other covering over the pool. We'd like to know if the owner can add those at a later date without having to go through any kind of public hearing or anything else like that. The proposal shows pool equipment being housed underneath the new addition of the house. I assume that means pumps such as those needed for both the spa and the pool. I wondered if those pumps would be enclosed. Our deck is directly landward from that location, and the pump and equipment noise would be quite a bit of a nuisance. If this permit is approved and they're allowed to go forward with that and the pumps are not enclosed, we will have homes with pools on both sides of us with pumps going. We'll have stereo pump noise. But during the construction process, John and Pamela's house, the contractor graded an area approximately 20 feet by 110 feet of our lot. They hauled off the sand. I counted 4 trees, approximately 1 to 2 inches in diameter, cut down. In addition to the small bulldozer that parked on our property, the mechanical lift was also parked on our lot, and various materials were stored there. All of this without ever being asked, without being notified in any way. We would like the trees and the sand to be replaced, and whatever work needs to be done to prevent the rain runoff from flowing down onto our property. I also have questions about site coverage, which y'all have had some discussion about, and I'm a little confused as to how much of the property can be covered. And again, the setbacks. If you'll notice in the plans, that retaining wall, I'm assuming, is on the lot line, and the cement pool deck is right up close to the retaining wall, and there's a little bit of landscaping in some spots, but there's a couple of spots where it's just pushed right up against that. I don't know if that's a violation or not, but I believe this concludes my
Thank you,
issues.
sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak either for or against? We'll close the public hearing. Commission?
I'm curious, have y'all spoken with the DNR about putting a pool deck in the sand dunes?
The initial application has been submitted, yes. And it's, Sunset Triangle pavers that are located over this in the area backfill in nature, but it won't be a poured, slab.
And that
I'll tell you what, Mr. Hightower, if you're gonna
Yeah.
speak very much further,
Sorry.
why don't you come to the microphone, I'm sure people will be.
Is the masonry retaining wall already there?
It is not there as proposed.
That's where the sandbags will come out and the masonry retaining wall will take the place of sandbags.
Yes, and part of this is pushing this away. What I failed to mention earlier is a lot of this has become due to sand accreting to the house. And we're trying to establish a line further away so that the kind of undercovered area that you see the low planting label doesn't hold sand anymore.
How tall is that retaining wall?
The retaining wall will reach same finish grade as the floor. I don't have the.
Pool deck floor?
Yes.
You
The
stated,
only raised portion will be right along the edge of the fire pit, where it will be raised 18 inches above grade to act as a seat wall for that fire pit area.
So that's another fire pit in the setback, huh?
It's a modular,
Okay.
yep. It's not a permanent structure.
Okay.
you stated that you have spoken to DNR.
Yes, this is,
Did you get a letter, something in writing from them?
do not have that right now, no. Not about, nothing in opposing of any of this yet.
The sandbags that were mentioned before, I recall when those went in, there was a lot of debate about those, and as it turns out, that ended up being a pretty good idea. It took a while, but it did stabilize that whole dune, dune area, and eventually there was vegetation that grew on top of that. Is it my understanding that some of that will be removed?
Yes, the bags that have, are failing to hold intact. And hence the need for the wall to help reestablish.
Mr. Chair, if I may, looking at the tax parcel, most of those bags are not on this parcel.
Well, that's what I looked at the same thing, and I
Yeah.
also looked at Google Earth to see if I could figure it all out, and I couldn't really tell. It looks like maybe a corner there or
Yeah,
something
just
might.
where the pool is.
Where this portion is where the sandbags are located.
And I guess that's a county street?
County alleyway.
It's county right of way. It's an alleyway.
Yeah. So, the county okay with them removing sandbags on the county's property?
Well, that was,
It's just the portion that's within their property.
So just on their property, not within the right of way?
It's got a line saying remove old sandbags pointed to the alleyway. Sorry.
yeah, but that was done a long time ago. You talking about the
It
sandbags?
says remove old sandbags.
Oh,
No, that says,
over-
that says remove old
Oh,
sand
sand
fencing.
fencing, sorry, sand
That is-
fencing.
That's deteriorated and falling apart.
Apologize.
Well, that's what it is.
No, the sand fencing is completely different than the sandbag itself.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the wooden
Yeah,
slats.
it's little like 1-inch wood slats
The
that are,
battens.
yep.
Yeah, there's sandbags. I don't know if you recall, not Commissioner Duncan, but those were big, white, as I recall, white, and everyone wondered, why couldn't they be sand colored, you know?
Can you point out where the retaining wall is? Just on there?
Yes, it's along the property line, this dark gray line follows along and runs up.
Okay.
And this is essentially where the existing grade that we want to marry is.
You know, the difference between this and the previous, our previous application, requesting something similar is this is in a dune field. You know, the other one was, it was behind a retaining wall. It was previously developed. In this case, we're actually sort of in the dunes, which makes it a little different. That's to I think the
Yes, that's what the
or the one person that came up and spoke to us about it. So, I don't know, it gives me a little heartburn, I suppose.
Agreed.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yes.
clarify again?
Yes, sir.
Is the process, we're approving this for conditional use, but then it has to go from that point to the DNR?
Yes.
It goes to the DN, well, first it has to go to the county commission. So all we're doing is making a recommendation. So we'll make a recommendation to the county commission. They'll then take it up, and then if they're successful there, then it'll go to
But
the
it ultimately has to go to the DNR,
Absolutely.
regardless of,
Yes, Mr. Worley, that's correct, is it not?
Correct, as long as it's in the jurisdiction of the Shore Protection Act line, which it should be because we matched our lines with theirs with that ordinance amendment you were referencing earlier, then it'll go to the DNR next. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, DNR requires the county's approval first before they will accept an application.
Right.
right, but it does not necessarily mean DNR will approve it.
No.
It gets to that point. I just want to make sure if we're voting to approve something, and we talked about the last one, I know there, and I can see there's a significant issue with this one, with the sandbags and the area that it's in. But what we would be approving is basically the same thing we approved before. But the DNR would have to deal with this issue of the sandbags and the protected area,
Well,
all of that.
Right, they have to deal with everything that's within their jurisdiction, which is that entire area that he's got marked for a pool.
Right, but I'm just trying to make sure the way we vote would be, it's similar to what we did with the last one, but the DNR is gonna have to, in my mind, the DNR is gonna have to look at this one differently than what.
Well, they have to look at both of them.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
I'm just wanting to sort of get clear in my mind of what we would be voting. We're still voting on the conditional use
Correct.
for this,
Yeah, we-
regardless of what the DNR, it's basically being handed off to them to deal with the issues of the dunes, the sandbags, all of that.
Right.
Okay.
Chairman, I know we dealt with this before with those coast cottages, I guess they're called, with all the sand moving around. There's been a considerable amount of sand movement on East Beach past few years, hasn't there?
Considerable.
Yeah, this dune was, the toe of the dune was surveyed December 2020. I imagine it can't be even close to the same place it was.
It would be the same thing, you still have to have a DNR letter within a year.
Right, but how are we approving what the DNR, how are we giving the DNR our sign off if we don't have accurate data saying where the toe of the dune is?
Ms. Leaf, did the DNR certify this line recently, or is this an old line? or-
Yeah, I was just gonna see if we had that in the packet.
I mean, the survey shows 2020 on this survey in the packet.
Is, when looking at that, I don't have that in front of me at the moment. The original survey was done in 2020. The jurisdictional line, I believe, has a date next to it, dating when it was, can you bring back the original
It says,
survey?
yeah, see note 4, which note 4 says December 2020.
Because it wouldn't have had a 25-foot setback at that point. All the laws had changed.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So you do have a more recent jurisdictional determination, though?
Yes, because they also came out in regards to the work being done on the house, as as they were driving, lists and stuff on the outside, in caution to the dunes. DNR has made site visits in regards to this property at this point.
But did they,
But there should be, they reflagged the line that's on this survey.
But there should be a letter that states that the reestablished, like if that's
Yes.
expired in 2020, then there should be a letter within the last 365 days.
that's right.
Ms. Leaf, do we have a policy or a requirement, length of time that the DNR line should be established before we actually hear any of these things?
I mean, DNR does have the 1 year restriction on theirs. When we did have the establishment of the setback line going to the Board of Commissioners, that was basically their policy too, was just to mimic the DNR. So like basically the county's determination on the setback was also a year as well, just to, keep consistent with the DNR. That's not something we have in the code, but I think that's a good policy. But that's what I'm wondering. I'm sure there is a letter, and typically we do have those as part of the packets. It doesn't look like we had it in this particular application though, because that's always a good way for us just to verify that it's recent information.
Because if our development line is based on 25 feet from the flag DNR line, and the flag DNR line expires after 12 months, then we currently don't know where the line is.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern, is just being able to confirm
Especially with all the changes
where
we've
that
had
line
lately.
is.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's-
absolutely. Mhm.
It could be better.
Like I said, I know the DNR's been there within the last few months, so I will double check, because they reflagged it for us prior to starting these plans. So I'll find that letter and make sure it's,
Yeah, I mean, if we could
So-
see it, that's all. I hate to vote on something that's not accurate anymore.
Mr. Chair, just looking at the site plan, appears to be just the corner of the property is encroaching on the toe of the dune. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess that would be the sort of the northeast corner.
Yeah, southeast. Oh, sorry, you're right, northeast.
This corner.
Yep. Is that by habit? Are you intentionally doing that, or what are you suggesting?
can you rephrase that, please?
Yeah, you want to build in seaward of the dune tow line.
Yes, the intent was to build to the extent of their property line in an
Okay.
ever-changing dune field.
So I don't think we can approve that.
Well, it might be appropriate to have a motion that would suggest that we not do that.
Well,
That not be allowed.
What if we defer until he gets a new updated line?
Well, the updated line is an issue, but if you come back with this same design, that, I don't recommend that.
All right, well,
We,
thank you,
So-
Mr. Hightower. I think it's back up to us now.
okay.
Trying to win. You looking for a motion, Chairman?
Ready?
I'll make a motion to defer, how long do you think you need to get a new line? Yeah. Either or.
You need to have an updated letter from the DNR that states when the DNR, when that line is, good for, when it expires.
I'll search my files this evening and put a call out tomorrow, so
You want 30 days or 60 days?
30 days.
I need to specify the date, don't I?
Yeah, February 21st is the February IBC
Defer,
meeting.
make a recommendation to defer CUP 5357 to the February 21st meeting.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McHale. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you. Now we've got one,
Okay.
for those who would like to stick around for the highlight of our meeting. Election of officers. We need to elect a chairman and a vice chairman this evening.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to nominate our current chair, Robert Urshery, for chair for 2023.
Second.
Any other nominations? Come on, let somebody volunteer.
You're stuck with it.
Okay.
Well, that was supposed to be in before we voted, but so, you've already voted.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
No, we haven't.
What did, Patrick do?
He
I
made a
nominate-
motion.
I nominated.
You nominated.
Okay.
Got a
Now
second. Now we got to
Okay.
vote. All in favor?
Okay.
Please indicate. I guess I'll go along.
And-
All right, vice chairman.
I don't think, I don't think these nominations require a second, but that's a Robert's
Okay.
rule issue.
Right, I understand, but I called for it.
Chairman, since she's not here to defend herself, I nominate Bryce Brock.
Second.
All right. Any other nominations? Hearing none, we call the question. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.
Second.